Good evening, folks. It's WRFO Peer Banner 104.5 FM. Broadcasting live from our brand new studio at the moment. Very privileged to have a special guest to my left and to the right on the camera screen. Before I do so, I want to pay the bills and thank all the folks who help to make this event possible. In particular, I want to thank La Casa Cultural Latina. We'd like to thank the director, Lisette Rivera, as well, for having our guest be featured here. I want to thank SORF and Student Cultural Programming Fee for bringing him to the campus. Lambda Theta Alpha, Sorority Incorporated, Mecha. I'm trying to think of who else I might be missing. There's probably another student organization who helped to bring you here. We'd like to thank all of them for all their hard work and efforts in the backdrop as well. Of course, none of them have anything to do with this, so I want to dissociate ourselves. We'd like to thank them for making this possible. So let's do a quick introduction and tell them who you are, tell them where you're coming from. Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Oh, hello, Ray. My name is Bobby Gonzalez. I come to you from the South Bronx Reservation.
Big up.
I'm a multicultural motivational speaker, a grassroots community philosopher, a storyteller, a poet, and one group you did forget about who helped make it possible for me to be here, the Native Americans. Definitely. On campus as well. You know, I travel around the country telling people about their heritage, be it indigenous or Latino. I'm Puerto Rican, but I'm also very proud to be a Taino Indian as well, with my African heritage.
Thank you. I want to thank the Native American House as well for making this event possible, and all the other scholars and hopefully the elders and ancestors watch over us as we proceed. Going to do a quick and brief interview with Bobby Gonzalez because he's here for a short window. So I got a couple of questions to get a backdrop because people may see your work and may not understand the motivation and what's the machinations behind all of this. First and foremost, what is it exactly that you do? I know you give a long, bloviated title for yourself. What do you do?
What do I do? I try to help people reconnect to their heritage, to help them find out who they really are, where they came from, in order to get ahead in society. And I don't think that's necessary. I think you can embrace your heritage and move on up.
Okay. Now let me ask you, people may go to your website, they see a splattering of different forms of art and media that you produce out there, but what can people expect if they sequester you to, get you to come to their campus?
Well, I want to, what I do is I challenge people. I challenge people to think. I challenge people to disregard much of what they've been told in the classrooms and in the history books, because there's so much misinformation out there, and a lot of the true stories will not be found in any books. A lot of the true stories will not be heard in the classroom or seen on television or in the movies. So I provide for them the information and I point them in a direction for them to go to and continue to search on their own. Okay.
And how long have you been doing this for?
Professionally, about 20 years, 22 years, right? I've been traveling around the country. So far, I've been in 38 states, including Alaska. Haven't been to Hawaii yet, but I'm working on that.
Working on it. Work it.
And I grew up in a housing project in the South Bronx.
Which one?
I grew up in the Melrose houses, and sometimes people say, "Oh, you're from the projects, man." I said, "Back off." Let me tell you, for example, where I grew up in the Melrose houses, produced a number of outstanding individuals who accomplished a lot. Bobby Sanabria, who's been nominated for 2 Grammys as a Latin jazz musician. Pablo Yoruba Guzman, who one of the founders of Young Lords. He's won 2 Emmys for TV journalism. From 700 Morris Avenue in the projects came Jimmy J.J. Walker, who was a star on the TV show Good Times. Right now, from building 320 in the Melrose houses came a great athlete, Willie Colon Jr., who is now the right tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he has a Super Bowl ring, and he came from Melrose.
Big up. And also, I know some personal scholars myself. Hello to Siobhan Hilton as well, another scholar from the Melrose Projects. Now, you've been doing it for 22 years. Right. Can you shine us to say what has been a truism or one of the main truisms you found as you travel from place to place? Has anything stood out to you and said, you know what, that you didn't anticipate encountering as you went across these different communities and cross sections of the country?
Well, what's really eye-opening for me is in my travels, I've encountered many Native elders. And they always blow my mind away when they tell me stories of their people, and some of these stories are over 500 years old. Wow. For example, I was out in Michigan, and these Ojibwe elders would tell me, "Oh yeah, we heard about Columbus landing down on your islands back in 1492. We sent people down in canoes to investigate. We got there in 4 days." I said, "Really? You got there in 4 days?" All right. So I said maybe there was a metaphor there, and then I heard another story from people up in Canada, who said they would regularly receive visitors. This is before Columbus, down from South America. These people, these visitors, will embark on 7-year journeys to go up to Canada and
7 years.
Well, there were no horses in those days.
I feel you, but 7 years is a long time.
Yeah, and it would.
Is that another metaphor or no?
No, I think it was literal. People would travel a great distance in those days, either by foot or canoe, and they said would stay there for a while, exchange stories, and then return. Another 7-year journey. People say, "Come on, people don't travel that great distances." Well, I know, and in Ohio, there's an excavation called the Hopewell Mound, and in it they found a pipe in the shape of a manatee in Ohio. The manatee only lives in the Caribbean.
Right.
So how did it get up there? We got around a lot. All right? Native people, and of course we had visitors here from Africa before Columbus. Everyone came before. The Chinese came to the West Coast. The Scandinavians, the Swagans came up north. The Africans came. So everyone took their turn, but Columbus had the best PR man, and that's why everyone knows him today.
And that's what matters. That's what we do all our own PR here on the show as well.
Yeah.
So you've been traveling around, finding to different places. What's been your favorite place that you've been thus far? Obviously, well, I wouldn't want to say Urbana-Champaign. You know what I'm saying? What's been
Well, I love Urbana-Champaign. It's the second time I've been here. I was here about 5 or 6 years ago. I was sponsored back then by Lambda Theta Alpha. I don't have one favorite place. What I like is traveling all over the country and meeting young people who give me hope. Because when you watch mass media, you watch TV, you read the newspapers, you get a low opinion of young people. They don't give you this mass media doesn't give you much hope. But I go out there and I meet young folks like yourself who are working hard to learn their true histories, and they're also trying very hard to make this world a better place to be in, to live in. I go to colleges and I don't meet young people who say, well, I want to get out of school and get a nice job, make a lot of money. No, I say, I want to get a degree, I want to learn and use my knowledge to help make this world a better place. So I just love traveling out there, interacting with the young people, and I see right now at this point, this resurgence in political activism. And it all began in New York City. Okay. With Occupy Wall Street, which is now spread all over the world. And things were kind of slow there. People kind of, self-centered and apathetic, but now things are jumping. And it's growing, and it's growing, and it's growing. I find it ironic that I would watch CBS News and CNN. They would spend all these weeks on Egypt, Libya. Isn't it wonderful? They're rising up.
Arab uprising.
But then when it came here, if you noticed, when the Occupy Wall Street began, for 2 weeks, there was an absolute media blackout. They didn't want to mention it. They didn't want to give it any credit, any exposure. But then when 700 young people were arrested on the Brooklyn Bridge, they said, okay, like it or not, we got to show the story. And I live in New York City, and you get a lot of negative press on it. They show you just the bad. But I've always been telling young people, especially now, when I was coming up, the government had a program called COINTELPRO. So during the Civil Rights Movement, Black Panthers, Young Lords, even mainstream Civil Rights Movement, they would plant people to stir things up. And I said, it's going to happen in Occupy Wall Street, and they've done that. But people have been exposing it, how the New York Police Department would put in homeless people, people with substance abuse problems, and put them in among the Occupy Wall Street people who would start trouble, and then they would come in and start arresting.
Justify, legitimize
So we have to be very aware of that, how the man works.
Definitely. And big ups to Joe Fidia Galicia, Laura, and also Quetzali out there from iresist.org, who were helping to film and document the Occupy Oakland effort as well. So big ups to them. So you've been traveling out in same tangent in terms of hardships. What has been one issue you found in terms of getting your message across? Have you found any barriers or any issues you feel like you wish were not as prominent, perhaps, in terms of getting your message out there?
I think when I go out there and I spread the word, make my presentation, sometimes I encounter this resistance of people who don't want to know what happened in the past. It's like they say, well, that happened all those years ago. Forget about it. I said, well, we're still suffering from the consequences now. To okay, slavery was a long time ago. I said, well, the trauma is still felt today. You know, I was talking this early this evening to the students here at UIUC about how my people, the Taino, had the greatest mass suicide in world history. And I was explaining to the audience where suicide is still a problem among Native people, a huge one. Native people, North and South America, and it's a direct relationship between the trauma of the genocide that began in 1492 and the mass suicide that's still going on today, and substance abuse and alcoholism and domestic abuse. It's all related.
Exactly. It's unfortunate that some people can't see the connections with that in terms of all the conditions we're suffered. And I always take personal issue when those presentations are made and those circumstances are not properly contextualized. You know, it's all good for someone to be a social scientist and bring those sort of statistics and information out there. But when they say we don't know why, you know, you don't need to be a brainiac to realize when you subjugate a people for a long period of time, hundreds of years, that there's going to be, you know, things which last for long periods after that, even when the supposed oppression has stopped. And like I said, I take umbrage with a lot of these folks at different presentations. I always have to control myself to try to bring a calm voice, to bring reason to them. But it's difficult when so many people employ the same tactics and they don't realize and not contextualizing them that they're adding to the burden rather than educating and advocating for our populations, unfortunately. So you've been traveling around, going to different places. What is your proudest contribution thus far that you would say, something you say is your mark, or that you'll say that you're happiest with in terms of production to date?
That's hard to say.
Powwow, perhaps, in the South Bronx?
Well, I MC the only American Indian powwow in the South Bronx. Do it every September. But I think the work
Where do you do that? Where do you do that?
When do I do it?
No, where do you do that?
Pelham Bay Park, right by the train station, number 6 line.
Right.
But you know what? One thing we haven't discussed yet is, which gives me a lot of joy, is I do storytelling for children, and it's really wonderful because I tell the stories, I make them laugh, but I'm also educating them about their culture. So I do Taino, Native American stories, or Seneca Indian from New York, and the stories make them laugh, but they may not realize that there are also important lessons in these stories. I tell you about the culture of the people, and also the special values that Native people have taught their children from eternity. So working with the young ones, so I'll be in the kindergarten group, 5, 6 years old, telling them stories, and I get more of a kick from that than addressing an auditorium full of PhDs.
Nothing personal, present company excluded, right? Gotta brush my own ego for the second. I'm like a childlike mind as well, I've been told. But in terms of what has been some of your, you have a book out as well, right? You have a book?
Yes, I have The Last Puerto Rican Indian, a collection of dangerous poetry. And in that book, through verse form, I reflect upon 5 centuries of upheavals, challenges, and accomplishments of the indigenous people of North, Central, and South America and the Caribbean.
You know, what I really liked about when I saw your website, bobbygonzalez.com, is that in it you show a clip of you telling some of the stories and some of the lore that has passed down through the generations. And I could see in it the way you were describing, I felt like a child as well in terms of, and then also at the same time I realized that this is something we're missing in the community. You know, and that's the thing, it's a residue of the oppression and the links being broken. And I've heard from a lot of different scholars, and especially indigenous scholars, that say we need 7 generations or links before the oppression can really be removed from our communities. And I think part of those links is telling those stories so that we can rediscover them. And I'm going to ask you a question, because this has come up recently. I thought I saw it in a CNN article, in that a lot of Latinos are starting to identify as Native. What is your take on that? What is your...
Well, I think, back in the year 2000, the census in Puerto Rico, 80% of Puerto Ricans said that they were white. I said to myself, wow, there must be a shortage of mirrors down there. However, in the 2010 census, the number of Puerto Ricans who identify with either their African or Native heritage increased by 50%. So more and more so-called Latinos are identifying with their indigenous and African heritage. And I think one reason is because you have a new generation of leaders who identify as such. Hugo Chavez of Venezuela is very proud of both his African and Native heritage. You have a president of Bolivia who's Aymara and proud of who he is and he was always promoting. So you have the leaders. You have this upsurge of people proud of who they are, and they're doing their own personal research on their personal history of their families, of their nation, and finding out this is really wonderful. It's not just about Spain. Now, Spain, it has a beautiful culture, a mixed history, but it's part of who we are, and we should be proud of it and take our claim to it. But there's also another side of who we are, and that comes from Africa, and that comes from Indigenous America, and we should embrace it all. Embrace the diversity within ourselves.
Definitely. I really appreciate that message, because I find a lot of people in having, let's say, midlife indigenous crises, that they have a tendency to sort of wash off or try to disavow the other contributions of their ancestors to who they are. And it's unfortunate, because I think, we've created this sort of little weird diaspora within ourselves, and like this psychology that says, you have to pick one or the other rather than embracing all of them. And also want to bring the point about the word Latino versus Hispanic, because I think that plays a huge role as well. I think when people rediscovering themselves with that term, are aligning themselves with Latino and reflecting the fact that there's an indigenous and African contribution, whereas the word Hispanic really says you're of Spanish origin and doesn't recognize those. Do you have any thoughts on that, or how do you identify?
Well, Latino, or the term
put you in
Hispanic,
a box. Check a box for me.
No, Latino and Hispanic are both inadequate, because we have such a diverse culture of so many backgrounds. Now, a person I really admire is Dolores Huerta. Now, Dolores Huerta, for the viewers and listeners out there, might be aware, she was the right-hand person for Cesar Chavez for many years. And she's, right now at this moment, she's 80 years old, and she's still out there organizing, she's agitating, and she doesn't use the word Latino or Hispanic to identify herself. She uses the word indigenous, indigena, because that embraces it all. So I'll go with that.
There you go. It's so funny and ironic. I didn't get a chance to meet Dolores Huerta. She was supposed to be at a conference we had. Her, I think it was grandniece, ended up stepping in, who I know pretty well. But they're from Cali. I think they might be from the Bay, actually, the Bay Area, where they do a lot of their organizing. Okay, coming up, you're doing a tour tomorrow, I think in Missouri.
I'll be going to William Woods University in Fulton, Missouri.
Woo, middle of nowhere, bro. Middle of nowhere.
Well, some people say the Bronx, middle of nowhere. I think everywhere is the center of the world. And I think the best education in the world is to go out there and travel and meet all kinds of people who think as you do, and people who think differently from you. And travel, meet these people, and try to conduct a dialogue and listen. 2 words that I never use: you're wrong. Whenever I speak with anyone, I say, oh, that's interesting. However, have you ever considered this point of view? So I'll be traveling to Missouri. I'll be traveling across the country during the school year, and I'll be speaking the words, spreading the message, and also learning a lot myself.
So let me ask you this: if you could project forward, I'm not how often you do this. Project forward 5 or 10 years. You are at XYZ location doing, JY, JHI, whatever. What do you are 5 to 10 years? What do you want to be accomplishing or hope to do?
5 or 10 years from now, I want to take this message past the United States. I'm talking with people about this right now. Take it around the world. People talk about globalization, and when most people talk about globalization, they talk about economics, but I see it more of a spiritual globalization, people coming together. I'll go back to this Occupy Wall Street. It's become worldwide, universal. People over the world are waking up and saying, hey, this is about us, the people, the 99%, the common folks, the so-called common folks. So I want to go out there, travel around the world, spread the message, and also learn as well.
Definitely, it's a fantastic message as well. I'm thinking myself 5 to 10 years from now, I'm still gonna probably be in this place. Oh, hopefully, no, I'm not gonna be here. No, definitely not. There's no way in the world I'm gonna be here in 5 to 10 years, for better or worse. I won't be here. But moving forward, you bring up a good point about going worldwide and globalization, and something people need to realize with music, in particular with hip hop, that was the first musical art form to really traverse that digital divide and go global. Before that, there had really been, the internet didn't exist, but hip hop was actually the first art form to do that, to go transnational and to take over the airwaves in that fashion. And that's why it's helped to be so impactful in different communities across the globe. And of course, that came from the South Bronx. Big ups to them as well. So it also should be of no surprise that in terms of philosophies and thoughts, because in ingesting our music, I don't think people are realizing they're learning our history and our culture and also carrying our messages. And unfortunately, a lot of people, when they do that, don't analyze them critically. And I wish that they did, because and one story that I'll reflect upon is I went to Vienna and I was in a club, and there were a lot of people who really didn't speak English, but were regurgitating the words to a hip hop song verbatim, and I was just like taken aback by that. It wasn't the best song, the most nicest song, put that out there, but it just took me aback to think that we had done that. We had, I almost call it a bloodless coup, and that we took over everyone's mind without even realizing we were attempting to do that. And now that we have our consciousness elevated to realize that it is possible, literally the world is our oyster. Mm-hmm. So any last thoughts you have for a young scholar or mind out there, anyone you want to reach, you want to impact them and say, not only what your message is, but your thoughts in the heart to help connect to them? Anything, last words you want to leave them with?
I think the most important thing is stay connected to your ancestors. Be proud of who you are. A young lady recently spoke to me at a college presentation I gave last week. She says, "Bobby, I'm adopted. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I came from. How do I find out?" And I said, well, what you do is every night before you go to sleep, pray to your ancestors and keep on praying and be persistent. And one day they will come to you in one form or another, form of a human being, a book, a song, a vision. But you have to believe that the spirits of your ancestors will never abandon you, and if you cry out to them, they will come to you and help.
Thank you very much. Uplifting words from the scholar, grassroots community philosopher, Bobby Gonzalez. I'd like to again thank all the folks who make this possible. Not only La Casa Cultural Latina, Lisette Rivera, the director. I'd like to thank Mecha, Lambda Theta Alpha Sorority Incorporated, my team in the back, AON, and the media chef Mike in the background making everything possible. I'd like to thank all the scholars. Like I said, WRFU up here about 104.5 FM. We're not too good for criticism, and if you want to email us, you can email us at WRFU@theshow1045.com. Again, it's WRFU@theshow1045.com. And with that said, we're out.